Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh and we're revelling in lots of new Overwatch Lore and story from BlizzCon 2018. In this video I'll round up what we've learned lore-wise and can speculate with a bit of analysis of the new animated short for Overwatch Reunion, in which a McCree trip back to Deadlock Gorge allows him to deal with some issues from the past as well as something that may well affect the future of the Recall of Overwatch as we know it. During BlizzCon 2018's opening ceremony, we also were introduced to the 29th Overwatch hero Ashe with a Origin trailer that was also shown in the What's Next panel at BlizzCon 2. Now, I will be summarising that panel later, but let's go through the animated short. Here's my story and lore analysis and reactions and first thoughts. It contains spoilers, of course, so look away now if you need to watch the short first and then come back to this video to share your thoughts and have a look through it in the comments. There might be a few things you've missed. Firstly, I'll quickly summarise the story of the short. If you want to skip this, time codes are in the description below to skip to any particular section. As Pale Rider by the Heavy Horses plays in the Highside Diner, it's not quite high noon by the clock as we see Jesse McCree tucking into some coffee and pie. In the background we see a train blown off the tracks, and it is this train that we see devastated on the ground of the attacker's spawn of Route 66. Now, pausing before continuing on with his final forkful of pie, McCree, cool as a cucumber, picks up a strange token or chip from the table before heading to the scene of the commotion. Outside, in a scene of chaos, a gang is stealing weapons and the train's contents from their bandanas. This is the Deadlock Gang, McCree's ex-gang from before he was recruited into Blackwatch. Strolling through the smoke, McCree faces off against Ashe, one of the founders of the Deadlock Gang, alongside McCree back in the day. Saying it's been a while, the two don't have a hugely antagonistic greeting. Ashe does warn Jesse, however, to move along as they've worked hard for the score that they're taking. Now, McCree states that he only wants the crate, and Ashe doesn't get a reply when she asks what it actually contains, after her and her Omnic sidekick B.O.B looking inside the chest in wonder. Surrounded and outgunned, the face-off begins. With an Omnic sniper trained on his back, we see McCree taking his time, and B.O.B, Ashe's lackey, and in fact ex-robot butler in her lore, sweating oil even. As the clock turns high noon, the fight begins. McCree's flashbang shoots a tether to make sure that the train wreckage falls against his opponents and swiftly turns the odds in his favour. Yelling at B.O.B to do something, we see Ashe's Omnic butler opening fire with heavy-duty cannons, apparently an upgrade since McCree has last saw him. The Omnic also has a nod to his past in the form of a little bowler hat and of course a very suave moustache as well. After a fancy dead eye onto some thrown grenades, McCree ends up winning out the day, sending an angry Ashe and gang back to their hideout strapped aboard the payload. Unlocking the crate, we see McCree add the chip, now some kind of unlocking device or activation device, onto what appears to be a chess piece. A face projects out and recognises and calls McCree as Cowboy. Saying, "Welcome back, partner," taking off his hat in a respectful gesture, McCree helps what has been confirmed to be Echo, presumably an Omnic of some kind associated with Overwatch, out of the crate. Now, Echo is unsure how long that she has been out, and she also doesn't recognise McCree as having a cybernetic arm. That dates exactly how long she's been, let's say, in storage. Saying that the band is getting back together, McCree says that they want him, but he believes that they actually need Echo more than they need McCree in a reformed Overwatch or in Winston's Recall. When asked what he's going to do, McCree says he has some business to attend to, and grabbing Ashe's bike with a picture of Ashe and a young McCree on the speedometer, he rides off into the sunset, asking Echo before he goes to say hi to the monkey. He means scientist. Here's my main thoughts, lore analysis, and more on the short and the Origin trailer. Firstly, we saw a bit more about everyone's favourite Cowboy, played by Matthew Mercer of Critical Role and many other places fame. We did get a bit more of McCree's personality via the short. He was totally unfazed by the train crashing outside, making sure to have his last forkful of pie, and even being sure to pay for his meal and coffee before leaving. I did like the lyrics of the Heavy Horses Pale Rider on the jukebox. Ride to town, shoot 'em up and keep on going, because I got a job to do and I don't stop for no one. So get your gun and kiss your wife and lock up your daughter, don't let her fall in love with the Pale Rider, and more. So yes, maybe equating McCree to being this sort of lone vigilante type, and of course in the very Western style that this whole short was done in, sort of paying homage to the tropes and having a bit of fun with it as much as anything else. Now, I did like McCree's combat style, his patience in waiting for the right moment to start the duel, although of course in Western shootout style we did have to have a tumbleweed rolling between all parties concerned. He fights very tactically. You see him throw his flashbang and then shoot the chain to dislodge the train car to try and get some cover and turn the odds in his favour. Did like his combat awareness here, with this one particular moment where he blind shoots the sniper who's sneaking up on him. He was clearly aware of where he was. And then of course his customary accuracy in a fast fashion with that dead eye shooting on the grenades. Actually, of course, maybe for plot armor in terms of not killing anyone human as much as anything else. Of course, remember that Overwatch shorts tends to take a bit of a toll on Omnics rather than anything else. So his accuracy means that McCree detonates these grenades in midair, and therefore the only casualty is poor old Bob, who gets blown to a few bits but still seems to be okay, and everyone else seems to have a bit of a headache. I did like McCree's kind of gestures of respect, his kind of, gentlemanly courtesy, for want of a better word. He is respectful to Bob, says no hard feelings, gets a blink back. That seems to be the most that Bob, the Omnic butler, communicates at the moment. And his clear respect for Echo at the end. She calls him cowboy in kind of a familiar, friendly way. And he calls her partner at the end of the short, takes off his hat, doffs his hat, as like a little gesture of respect as well. So I kind of like that insight into McCree's character there too. We also learned a little bit more about McCree Lore. I will save that for the Ashe section of this. Next up, the Deadlock Gang. Well, in terms of timelining, we understand a little bit more about them and how they operated and who the key players in them were. Now, timelining stuff in Overwatch is all relative, and you do have to take some of your own sort of values to base things around. Ashe in B.O.B lore is a couple of years older than McCree. She's 39 to his 37. So if you take, depending on how long you think from Overwatch's launch to the present day and the timeline has passed, take maybe 7 years away, she'd maybe be roughly 32, maybe her early 30s at the end when Overwatch actually was sort of shut down. It's said various places that Overwatch brought around 2 decades of peace to the world, if you include the Omnic crisis. If that was after the Omnic crisis, then of course she was pretty young when that was all kicking off. Now, the thing is that her and Jesse McCree must have founded the Deadlock Gang maybe in their late teens. Possibly could push that out a bit further. Ashe actually, according to her bio lore, had a good life, but she met a local ruffian named Jesse McCree, and some impromptu crimes that occurred, maybe the two of them together, opened her eyes to her true calling. So she was then cited in her bio lore as being one of the founders of the Deadlock Gang, and along with it, 2 unnamed people, apparently, as Michael Chu said in the What's Next for Overwatch panel that focused on Ashe and her creation somewhat. You can say that maybe these two were a bit older than their late teens when they formed the Deadlock Gang, but either way they were entrepreneurial, should we say, at quite a young age, relatively speaking, with McCree being a couple of years younger than Ashe. Now, the Deadlock Gang are Omnics and humans alike. They're certainly a free-spirited enterprise. We see several different types of Omnic, like the Omnic Sniper. We see some other Omnics in Ashe's Origin Trailer. I do like, personally, the Deadlock Gang's line in merchandise and branding. Now, if you look, they kind of have these kerchiefs around their face that have Deadlock Rebels on. They have their jackets with Deadlock Rebels on, just like Ashe's. Ashe has some skull earrings. I know they're skulls, but they sort of remind me of the Deadlock insignia, logo a little bit. Even their guns have living logos on and branding, so they clearly like their named swag. They're also dealing in weapons, many other things in terms of their business. Do watch my Route 66 lore video for map lore if you want to see more about that. It's still all good in spite of being made years ago. Now, the Deadlock Gang's lore had them fighting various other sort of gangs around the area of the American Southwest until Ashe brought the various gangs into order. She tried to negotiate, get them to sort of respect each other's territory, stopping the interfeuding amongst various gangs and kind of criminal organisations so each could focus on their own business by the sounds of things. And she in turn managed to dominate the American Southwest, as did the Deadlock Gang. The interesting thing is when the Deadlock Gang suffered the sting operation in which Reyes caught McCree effectively and gave him the choice of joining Overwatch, well, Blackwatch, all rotting in jail, so he kind of, with that choice, decided to join Blackwatch. Now, Soldier 76, of course, had the voice line, Reyes should have cleaned up the Deadlock Gang a long time ago. So why didn't Reyes clean them up? Maybe it's because he decided to recruit McCree. Did he let the others get away and grab McCree? There's still some sort of interesting questions there. Why didn't people go after the rest of the gang? I think it's safe to assume that since Overwatch fell 7, 8 or so years ago, depending on how you rate the timeline, they've had that time since no Overwatch in the world to flourish and thrive. Certainly, presumably when McCree left Blackwatch, he didn't want anything to do with the infighting and similar with Blackwatch and Overwatch, so that's why we know that he left according to his bio. I wonder what he's been up to since then. He probably hasn't been with the Deadlock Gang, because in the short, it seems like the two, him and Ashe, haven't seen each other for a while. Next up, introducing Ashe and B.O.B. Well, Elizabeth Caledonia, Calamity Ashe as she's known, is an interesting character. She is the leader of the Deadlock Gang currently and a respected figure in the criminal underworld. Now, I'm going to do a separate lore video on Ashe's lore. As a summary, she's from a wealthy family. Her parents were sort of consultant CEO coaches in a corporate sense. She was left alone a lot as a kid with the family butler Bob. A bit of a wild child, met McCree, and then sort of discovered criminal path, as it were, and founded the Deadlock Gang with him and a couple of other people. Now, in the What's Next panel, I did love the fact that Michael Chi said that maybe Ashe's thoughts on organisation and structure, sort of her sorting out the rival gangs, sort of creating a bit of almost a cartel rather than them feuding between each other, was somewhat based on her parents' corporate experience, and also maybe that B.O.B, as being sort of one of her only probably role models or figures in her life growing up, maybe had a bit of effect on her in terms of organisation and things as well. When Ashe sees McCree, she says, "It's been a while, you said you'd write." Have the two, I wonder, really not seen each other since McCree was conscripted into Overwatch and Blackwatch? It could be quite some time ago. We could be talking like, at least over a decade perhaps, or at least a decade. McCree in sort of various earlier art images of Overwatch, including that sort of famous Ana Amari Origins trailer image, looks quite young. Given that they've probably not seen each other for quite a long time, they are remarkably cordial. It's not an angry greeting by any means. Well, what of the past? Ashe certainly holds the memory of those days of the gang, and perhaps McCree in some regard. Now, I do like it at the end when McCree rides off on Ashe's bike and you see this damaged, taped up picture, whether it's been ripped apart and then taped back together or just been weathered by time, I will let you decide, showing that Ashe and McCree were playing cards in their younger and maybe more carefree days. So Ashe clearly has some good memories of that time in the gang. Maybe of Jesse, who knows. Last but by no means least, Echo. Well, this mysterious, are they an Omnic? Are they a sort of housed AI or something like that? But McCree has put himself into considerable danger, albeit one he's familiar with, to jump in and try and rescue her. Now, I got so into analysing and talking about Echo, I'm actually going to make a separate video on her, so I'm just going to cover the key points for now, but keep an eye out for my second video exploring Echo in a lot of detail, which will be on the channel pretty soon. But suffice to say, McCree has somehow had the ability to reactivate her. We see this kind of activation chip, this kind of key piece of her that he has on the table at the beginning of the animated short. Where did he get it from? Big question there. I don't think he's been back to Winston Watchpoint Gibraltar. Has he kept it with him all this time? Many questions to be asked as to also what Echo is doing on a US military train. We do of course know private military companies like Helix Security and others have been guarding Overwatch technology and installations. Soldier 76 raided, for example, Watchpoint Grand Mesa to get his pulse rifle back. Maybe Echo was being kept in a similar place after Overwatch shut down. Timelining and dating of her and things I will do in a separate video. The past between McCree and Echo seems quite interesting. The way that they talk. And McCree has got such respect for how powerful she is. He says, well, they've recalled. They want to get the band back together. They want me, but they need you. He really puts that emphasis on it, really respects her abilities there. But it's very interesting. There are many questions we have to ask about Echo. What is her relationship to Athena, if any? Because obviously her design was very similar to a previous Athena, or what many people, myself included, speculated since the beginning of Overwatch to be Athena. What about that logo on her head? Is it Vishkar Corporation related? When did perhaps Echo get put into storage, as it were? What timeline does she work on? What's she going to do now? What does this mean for the Overwatch Recall? So many questions, can't wait to find out. Check out my separate video where I talk about Echo in a lot more detail as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really love this animated short. What were your favourite bits? Do let me know in the comments. Throw a like, subscribe if you enjoy this. See all of my BlizzCon 2018 panel coverage, news around Ashe's announcement, all of your BlizzCon and Overwatch news here and beyond, and I'll be doing a bunch more in the weeks and indeed months to come. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.